Hello everybody and welcome. It is Wednesday, 4 p.m. Central European Time, so it's webinar time. Our webinar sessions center around the topic of populism and is part of the Nova Migra, that is, Norms and Values in European Migration Crisis project funded by the EU. The Nova Migra project tackles a topical issue that has become prominent in recent years in political science: the question of the rise of populism, its connection with migration, and its effects on Western democracies. The accompanying 5-part webinar series covers the relationship of migration and populism from various levels of abstraction. So we'll go from the philosophical to the socio-political approaches. The presentations will be accompanied by slides summarizing the content of the presentation. The webinar, by nature, is an interactive platform, so please feel free to join the discussion through our chat feature. Your questions will be answered and your remarks discussed after the presentation. And if you have missed something or would like to listen to any of the presentations again, we'll be sending the recording of the webinars around soon. So let's get started. Last week, we became acquainted with Ms. Gedő's suggestion for a new kind of methodological individualist position to the populist challenge. Today's webinar is going to be a special one, as we'll have 2 presentations in the field of political science. The presenters will compare policies of 2 right-wing populist parties from Western Europe, that of the Front National and the AfD, which is all the more topical in light of the recent election scandal in Thuringia. The presenters are Ms. Eva Gedő, whom you have already heard last week. She is an associate professor at John Wesley Theological College, researching populism as a political philosophy and theories on fascism. The other presenter is Ms. Eva Szénási, who is professor emeritus at the University of Szeged. Her field of research includes the history of French political ideas. She was a visiting professor at the University of Lausanne and is an editor of the Varietas Europae book series at L'Harmattan, Hungary Publishing House. Please welcome our presenters and enjoy the webinar.
This lecture attempts to present firstly how the Front National, positioned as far right on the political palette, could become a serious political factor in France and the leader party of the European populist right after the turn of the millennium, and secondly, how the strategy and the language of the party changed after the turn of Marine Le Pen in 2011, especially on the migration issue. Yes, okay. The Front National can be defined as a radical right party as far as its roots are concerned. The sources of the rightist radicalism are to be looked for in the first decades of the Third Republic, which were infamous for financial scandals, political and ideological controversies. Under the influence of the defeat in French-Prussian War suffered in 1871, by the end of the 19th century, evolved a nationalist, conservative, revanchist, far-rightist ideological system, which was not free from anti-Semitism either. either. Yes. This was linked with a desire for order and authority and a hostility towards democracy and parliamentarism. After the German occupation, the Vichy collaborative government, formed in 1940, was highly defined by the radically rightist ideological frameworks shaped at the end of the 19th century. This ideology was also characterized by the nationalism and traditionalism of Maurice Barrès, the royalism and anti-democratic sentiments of Charles Maurras, and also the spirituality of his Action Française, which in turn was linked with the authoritarian system calling for a national revolution. Even though the more current far-right movements and groups of the 1950s and 1960s related to the 19th century beginnings and the myth of Pétain's strong state in their ideological background and political beliefs. Their emergence was connected to those social conversions which France had to face for decades following the Second World War. After the war in Indochina, the independence war of Algeria broke out in 1954, during which France was once again strangled in an ongoing armed conflict. The Evian Accords were considered a newly inflicted defeat, thus they turned the proponent of French Algeria, the paramilitary organizations, and the far-right movements against the system of de Gaulle. The creation of the party, the Front National established in October 1972 by those nationalist monarchist circles, new fascist groups, the proponent of new French Algeria and ex-Poujadists, which were looking for their place and their leader in the decades following the collapse of the French colonial empire and in the political vacuum created by the resignation of de Gaulle. The Art Nouveau, New Order, founded in 1969, evolved out of these groups and its leaders, François Duprat and François Brignot, following the example of the Italian neo-fascist party called Movimento Sociale, Italian social movement, aimed at creating an organization which would be able to unite the heterogeneous groups of different views and tactics, and would ensure the possibility of fitting into the democratic system for them. Okay. The newly born party, elected by Jean-Marie Le Pen as their president, who had served as a parachutist in the Algerian War and was one of the Poujadist representatives who became members of the National Assembly in 1956. The vice president of the party was François Brignot, who used to be a member of the paramilitary force of the Vichy regime called Milice Française. This is the current logo of the party. The party was predicted No. The Le Pen's authoritarian but parliamentary views were soon challenged by the extremist ideas of Maurras propagated by Bignot and his circle, and the dispute led to a breach and the foundation of the new party. The right to use the name of the party was granted for Le Pen by the court. The party was predicted not to survive long, and the first result seemed to confirm this scenario. The Front National achieved 1.3% in the national elections in 1973, and the founding president received only 0.7% at the presidential election in 1974. Which these results, the party hardly reached to the level of visibility. By the end of the 17th, it almost ceased to exist, and 1990 and in 1981, Le Pen could not collect 500 supportive signatures needed for his nomination in the presidential elections. The first oil crisis is 1973, ended the era of the so-called Trente Glorieuses in France too, which was an exceptional period of prosperity, resulting in an economic boom after the Second World War. From the middle of the 17th, prolonged economic crisis evolved, characterized by the slowdown in the pace of development, inflation, and an increase in unemployment, resulting social dissatisfaction. This period saw the advancement of the Front National, which was able to align not only the rightist radical constituent opposing the presidents of Mitterrand and the socialist communist governing coalition, but those social layers which started to fall behind due to the economic difficulties as well. The European parliamentary elections held in June 1984 are usually viewed as the real political appearance of the party, during which the list of the Front National, led by Jean-Marie Le Pen, acquired 11.2% of the votes. Such success had not been achieved by a radical rightist party in France, since the list of Pierre Poujade, considered to be a forerunner of the populism. The politics of Le Pen gradually spread its influence and occupied the different regions of France. Yes. In beginning, it became successful in the southern Mediterranean countries and cities, for example, Montpellier, Marseille, Nice, Toulon, which were affected by immigration. Then with the decline of the classical branch of industry, and because of the growing unemployment, appeared in industrial regions, such as the neighborhoods of Mulhouse-Belfort, Metz-Nancy, and Lyon-Saint-Étienne. From 19th, it spread to the center of the textile industry and the suburban district of Paris, Paris too. This advancement was prevalent in geographically well-definable regions. The area east and northeast of the line of Le Havre, Valence, Perpignan, and the Paris Basin. The surveys prepared between 1986 and 1985 pointed out that the votes supporting this party were rather protest type. There were more men among its voters. The ratio of young people between 18 and 34 was high, while the ratio of those above 65 and of women was low. The other distinguishing feature was that the electoral base of the party was rather from those with lower education, a high school degree as maximum, and it could not take in roots among people with higher education. The progress of the party The progress of the party was also due to the alteration of the electoral law by Mitterrand in 1985, the introduction of the proportional system, thanks to which the Front National achieved almost 10% in the national elections in March 1986 and gained as many parliamentary seats as the Communist Party, and with 35 members, it became part in the Legislative Assembly. From this point, the leader of the party and his view became increasingly well known due to the more and more common appearance in the media and the television debates. Le Pen's xenophobic, racist, and openly anti-Semitic statement arranging tremulous indignation can be dated to this period. Later, partly due to the impact of the new intellectual workshop shaping the rightist ideology, Le Pen's provocative expressions, his racism and anti-Semitism were gradually replaced by a more metaphoric language which was more acceptable for the electors. Certain racism, veiled by the protection of cultural identity, appeared in his speeches and his writings, which emphasized the difference in stature and culture among the people and questioned the possibility of integration of non-European, primarily North African immigrants. In the same period, the standard topics of the party became stabilized. This was the threefold slogan of immigration, insecurity, in employment. Linking these three suggested that immigrants were responsible for the unemployment and crime rate and insecurity, increasing insecurity and crime rate. This anti-immigrant attitude bore the slogan of Les Français d'abord, first the French, which was the title of Le Pen's book too. In 1984, organization named SOS Racism was founded with the support of President Mitterrand, which primarily aimed at winning to young immigrants on their side, and launched a campaign with the slogan "Touche pas à mon pote," don't touch my friend, to protect human rights and to fight racial prejudice and discrimination, to fight Le Pen's notion of nation based on ethnicity and his nationalism. Yes. In 1986, following his appointment as Prime Minister, Jacques Chirac restored the two-round majority system, even though Le Pen set a historic record by gaining 14.3% of the votes in the first round of the presidential election in 1988. But he could not shave this result in the following parliamentary elections, since the two classical right-wing parties, RPR and the UDF, agreed to designate joint candidates to prevent the radical right from further advancement. Due the electoral reform and the joint candidates, the number of the mandates of the Front National decreased. On local and regional level, especially in the southern regions, there are fiercely rejecting to the cooperation with the FN, and blocked the progress of the party, but it was temporarily. Which phenomenon? This analysis of the results of the presidential elections in 1995 drew attention to a new type of cross-voting from the left to right, to radical right, which was called worker Le Penism. The above-mentioned negative changes in the economic environment, the long-term unemployment, and the drastic decline of the worker living condition resulted a final or partial modification in her electoral behavior. The cross-voting can be detected in other European countries too. The bomb, the next bomb, exploded in April 22 in the first round of presidential elections, when Jean-Marie Le Pen qualified himself to be in the second round, next to Chirac, overtaking the candidate of the Socialist Party, Lionel Jospin. The leader of the Front National made history again. He happened for the first time that a candidate from the radical right made it to the second round in the French presidential elections. Then, in the second round, the Republican Front, the joint force of left and right, stepped forward, and Chirac was elected president with the biggest majority in the Fifth Republic. In 1924, Nicolas Sarkozy became the leader of the central-right post-Gaullist party, UMP. In his campaign for the 27 presidential elections, he adopted the crucial elements of the front agenda, which has the questions of security, immigration, and unemployment, with which he gained numerous radical frontist voters. With this policy, workers' vote diagram. Yes. With this policy, he could impressively force back to radical right in the presidential elections. No, vissza. Walker diagram marad. Presidential elections. However, the policy of contentment and suppression proved to be provisional. The election results of the front showed a slow rise from 28, but the changes of the party were limited with its elderly leader. Finally, Jean-Marie Le Pen announced his resignation, and in January 2011, he gave the party leadership to his younger daughter, Marine Le Pen, who was elected president with 67% this elector. The election of Marine Le Pen brought serious changes within the party from different perspectives. The new president made it clear in her inauguration speech that her strategic goal was to transform the party into a renewed, open, and effective organization and to get the power. Marine Le Pen did not only bring a change in the image and the communicational strategy of the party Front National, but strove to change its mentality. Those anti-Semitic and racist slogans which characterized the rhetoric of Jean-Marie Le Pen disappeared from the communication of the party. This process was described in French journalism as de-demonization. The victim of this, of which was her father himself, who was expelled from the party by his own daughter. With Marine Le Pen, the party's previously anti-immigrant sentiment has a new shade to it. The new leader refaces the values of the revolution and the notion of the republic. Yes. By exploring the argumentation of neopopulism, she poses as the defender of the democratic rights and laicity, and criticize Islam from this perspective. Lack of civil rights, sexual inequality, and laicity. At the same time, she never forgot to blame the actual government for being unable to handle the immigration wave and for not doing anything for their capacity against the spread of radical Islam. She calls for zero tolerance in solving the immigrant problem, and she demands the closure of borders and withdrawal of the right of immigrants to receive social benefit, free accommodations or medical service. In 2015 and 2016, at the peak of the migrant crisis, France suffered serious terrorist attacks committed by the ISIS in Paris and Nice. After these attacks, Marine Le Pen's tone of communication became even harsher. She connected immigration, Islam, and terrorism in her speeches, and she pressed for the closure of radical mosques, the final expulsion of radical Islamists, and abolishing dual citizenship. For the present situation, she put the blame on the French political elite of the right and the left and the European Union, and the European Union too, which has created migration instead of peace. By using more or less war rhetoric, she paints a dramatic picture about the nation, about the decline of France and the Islamization of the country. The Front National emerges as a hero of resistance and a symbol of national unity as the only political alternative in this war. The fight involved protecting the country from globalization and Brussels, from the international organizations and banks, IMF, EKB. The protection of borders play a crucial role, and gaining back independence of the country, the political and monetary sovereignty also. Similarly to the British example, Marine Le Pen also envisages leaving to EU and the Eurozone after a referendum, even though the latter is not supported by the majority of the French. She sees the solution is in creating a strong state, because only a protective and efficient state serving the interest of the national community can grant laicity and civil rights. She emphasized the role of the state as an initiator in economy and highlights its social function. Her party is sometimes blamed for being leftist. She plans to improve social conditions and to create works by forcing the foreign, primarily not European worker out of the country. Because the French deserve those few working possibilities. In the conception of her French policy, the new Europe can be born from the joint effort of the nations and Russia, which support her party financially too, should be granted a place in it. With her program and her new political languages, Marine Le Pen could win new layers of voters in the last decades. The composition of the base of the voter, the voter base, the popularity of the Front has grown beside the previous circles of the national, among the ex-leftist voters, middle class and civil servants, and the victim of the modernization. People living in the peri-urban regions, 30 and 50 kilometers from the agglomeration, to the town and the city widen, but the number of votes in the big city, for example in Paris, Lyon, Marseille, Montpellier and Strasbourg, decreased. Yes. The election results of the party proved the success. In the European parliamentary elections in 2014, the front list won with almost 25% and gained 24 mandates in the parliament, in the European Parliament. 1 month later, to Paris terrorist attacks, in November 2015, the Front National achieved an exceptionally high proportion, more than 27%, result with its anti-immigrant and anti-Islamist campaign in both rounds of the regional elections. It became much stronger in the whole country, but achieved outstanding results, especially in the regions of Nord-Pas-de-Calais, Picardy. Near Calais were one of the biggest camps for immigrants. And the party appeared in central France and such agricultural regions which earlier were considered to be district of the classical right. In the latest presidential elections in 2017, yes, in 2017, Marine Le Pen made it to the second round, right behind Emmanuel Macron, who was the candidate of the new catch-all party called En Marche Forward. And Marine Le Pen overtook the candidate of the classical right, the Republicans, who was involved in a corruption scandal. The Prenez le Pouvoir seized the power list of the party was successful in the European parliamentary election last May and received as many candidates, 23, as the list called Renaissance, which was supported by the party of the president in office. The reasons of the success of the Front National are to be found in the financial crisis of 28 and its consequences, and in such special French phenomena like the crisis of the left and right-wing parties, which have been unable to provide an authentic alternative for the citizen of the last decade. Thus, by utilizing the permanent social dissatisfaction, immigration, and the problem of integration, the spread of radical Islam, and the challenges of terrorism, the front has increasingly destabilized the two-party system, right-left, and has emerged to be the important political power and has redrained the political map of France. Okay. Jó, akkor a végét kihagytam.
Now I am speaking about German, the German right-wing populist party, AfD, so Alternative für Deutschland. So in 2017, a far-right party entered the German parliament for the first time in over half a century. Before the AfD, right-wing populist parties had achieved limited electoral success in Germany. The Alternative für Deutschland became the third largest party in the government, so within 4 years. So the party was formed in 2013 and entered the Bundestag as Germany's third strongest party 4 years later. Today, the party is present in federal state parliaments, the national and the European parliaments as well. So in the case of AfD in German, we are talking about a very young populist party with a right-wing populist, far-right and Eurosceptic, anti-Islamic and anti-migration stance. The rise of the AfD presented a schisma in German politics. Such as an increase in party support is unique in the history of the Bundesrepublik. This is all the more puzzling in the light of the fact that several decisive internal and external circumstances have acted against their gaining popularity. Yes. On the hand, chaotic conditions exist within the party. There are ongoing controversies, personal conflicts and splits, while on the other, the party was elected into Bundestag in 2017 when the migration wave slowed down, as a result of which many expected a significant drop in the party's support. The importance of the problem is further increased by the fact that we are talking about the most important political power, in case of Germany in Europe. As Germany is considered the second most important power in the Western world after the US, this phenomenon of German domestic politics is fundamental to the whole of Western democracy. The anti-establishment rhetoric of the AfD parallels that of other EU right-wing populist parties, such as the National Front in France, the Party for Freedom in Netherlands, and the Lega Nord in Italy. The surge in far-right voting in Europe and in Germany calls for a better understanding of the roots of this political wave. So I want to speak very briefly about these roots. First, there's some words on the history of the party. The EFD was founded in February 2013 as a Eurosceptic party by a group of university professors and former politicians. Their proposal centered in economic liberalism and the idea of a free market. The originally single-issue party soon found support from right-wing groups and started shifting towards an anti-immigration ideology. Since 2015, the AfD has advocated for anti-Euro, anti-immigration and anti-refugee policies, which had been taboo topics in German politics. I would like to speak now on the possible reasons for the access of the AfD. First, the AfD overcome this burden by distancing itself from the past and presenting itself as a party with economic expertise and scientific authority. Second, the second reason might be, moreover, it was able to stabilize a nationwide organization. If we seek to understand the impact of AfD, we need to look into the AfD's social media strategy over the last years and to verify the effectiveness of the party's online messaging strategy. The analysis proved that the AfD's superior online popularity relative to the rest of Germany's political parties. The AfD used all available social media channels to spread his message. Its campaign focused on Euroscepticism and the stance against immigration. Now, I suggest to compare the so-called Manifesto for Germany. This is the program of AfD with the activity of AfD on social media platforms. Mm-hmm. Yes. The AfD social media strategy we can see on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And the program of AfD is a 190 pages long text, which can be found on the internet too. Yes. So first I want to have a look at the program of AfD. Yes. What says the AfD on immigration? The party calls for a radical overhaul of Germany's immigration and asylum systems. Quote, "We want to change this. We demand a paradigm shift regarding, first, the influx of asylum seekers, second, the way how the free movement of people is handled inside the EU, third, the immigration of skilled labor from third countries, and fourth, the integration of immigrants belonging to these three countries." Remaining here, what the AfD said on the European Union and the Euro. Unlike UKIP in Britain, which advocated a referendum and the departure from the EU, the AfD support reform of of the EU. However, they state that if reforms away from centralization are not met, they will advocate a germ exit. As for the euro, the party calls for an end to the euro. They state that if the Bundestag doesn't do this, they will argue for a referendum to take Germany out of the single currency. And now I want to speak about issues referring migration. From the party's manifesto, the level of right-wing populists given to the AfD is very much accurate. The party opposes much of the mainstream European political consensus, and by doing so, have portrayed themselves as outsiders wanting to change the system. And the issues on migration, referring migrations, are linked to this main political will or of the party. The AfD on Islam. The party is known for its hostile attitude towards Islam, and its 2017 election manifesto is no different. In its extensive manifesto under the heading "Islam does not belong to Germany," it says, quote, "Islam doesn't belong to Germany. Its expansion and the ever-increasing number of Muslims in the country are viewed by the AfD as a danger to our state, our society, and our values." Besides that, the Alternative for Germany also has some strong views on the role of humankind in climate change. Under a heading called German Climate Protection Policy and Political Fallacies Protect the Environment, the manifesto declares, climate changes have occurred as long as the Earth exists. The German climate protection policy is based on hypothetical climate models, which in turn are based on computer-generated simulations in the IPCC, International Panel on Climate Change. Carbon dioxide, however, is not a harmful substance, but part and parcel of life. The AfD is also committed to the traditional family as a guiding principle. Marriage and families enjoy special protection under the German constitution. There is no direct statement opposing same-sex marriage. However, the wording indicates that the party opposes it and the same-sex adoption by being committed to the so-called traditional family. Now I would like to say some words on this mass media activity of AfD. During the past years, the AfD has been effective on social media as reported on different media platforms. Facebook post of AfD show that the AfD had more populist rhetoric on Facebook than on the other communication channels. From the literature, we can deduct three main points that explain the AfD's effectiveness on social media. First, the AfD has relied on social media platforms to spread its message. The party leaders have blamed mainstream media for presenting them in a negative light, obscuring their intentions. Using social media as an alternative media, the AfD reached a part of the German population. that felt disenchanted with already established communication channels. Furthermore, people with populist preferences in Germany have lower trust in media. The right-wing political party has taken advantage of this fact by employing a strong social media campaign. The AfD's strategy is to make use of this fact. It is furthermore, it is difficult to quantify whether the online manipulation attempts had a real impact on public opinion. However, they certainly contributed to boosting AfD's message online, or AfD in German and AfD in English. These 3 points align with the social media activity of other populist parties in Europe. AfD in German, so I say now AfD. AfD has taken the role in populist movements as the people's voice, facilitating the reinforcement of an anti-establishment ideology, communist populist parties. The AfD's number of fans increased sharply at the time of the refugee crisis. In 1 year, AfD's fan number almost doubled from around 140,000 to 260,000 followers. The data shows that the most active party was the AfD, between the parties of Germany, with more than 2,000 posts. At the same time, it was the one that received most comments. The AfD understands that their social media strategy is working and continues to push their message on Facebook. Concerning the posts created by the AfD, the format of this post consists of a message and an image that combines a short text with a picture. The tone of these messages is provocative and sometimes even sensationalist. The discussed topics are controversial, which makes users more susceptible to engage with the post and express their opinion. One of the most important words appearing on several posts is the verb teilen, to share. So it shows that AfD's strategy to viralize its content while explicitly asking their fans to share it, to share the comments. So now we can say that we can see some differences between what the AfD presents to its followers online and what the party's political intentions and motives are. These motives are formulated in the party's manifesto. The AfD doesn't speak on economic demands in their comments on Facebook and the mass media. These demands are formulated in the manifesto for Germany. But we can also see, however, a message that includes previously considered taboo topics, which the AfD brought in the public opinion, and which have even an influence on the parliament's agenda. So we can say that reasons for the party of AfD are second, speaking about taboos of German of issues that has been taboos so far, and second that they can very actively and very good use the social media resources and the social media platforms.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both very much for these interesting lectures. And since our time is up and since there are no questions from the audience, I would like to conclude our webinar session by urging the audience to join us next week again, when we'll have Professor Endre Schick talking on the Hungarian case. Thank you again. From all of us here at the Budapest Webinar Studio, it's goodbye.